Hello and welcome back to Bookish. It is a rainy morning here on the Texas Gulf Coast. I'd planned to go out fishing and make a video for my fishing channel, but I got rained out, so I thought I'd take advantage of this time in the morning and hopefully decent lighting here on this incredibly gray day to film a video. And I got tagged in a video by Alan Mahan, from his channel Big Hard Books and Classics, and it was about Southern writers, and that really is a topic that appeals to me. There were 6 questions in the American Southern Writers tag that I think Alan created. I couldn't find another creator, so I think it's an original tag with him. And the first question was, what is your favorite Southern novel? Well, that's pretty easy for me. My favorite Southern novel is The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. As a matter of fact, I think I mentioned this in my last video. So The Sound and the Fury is notoriously difficult, and I really think that's vastly overstated. There's really only one section of the novel that's challenging to read, and that's the first section where you see the story of the family in the novel through the eyes of Benji, who is a mentally impaired man. That's the only part that's the least bit challenging. And then what it really is kind of an ingenious way of piecing together the story of what's really the main character, and that's Caddy Compson and her family, with her brother Quentin and Jason and Benji and their housekeeper. And you essentially get the story of what happens with her told from all those different perspectives. And to me, it really is brilliant. And I think it's the best Faulkner novel. I know that I think Alan chose Absalom as his favorite, and I know that Absalom is usually ranked ahead of The Sound and the Fury now, which is fine. I think that's a good novel, but I think that if we're asking favorite, I'm going to go with this one because I think it's actually more accessible than Absalom is. By the way, I'm kind of was a Faulkner freak for quite some time. I'm not bragging, but I kind of went on a Faulkner jag for a few years in my life, and there's not a lot of Faulkner's fiction that I've read, or at least not a lot of, or that I haven't read. At least not a lot of Faulkner's novels that are set in the South that I haven't read. So I could also highly recommend Light in August. I think is brilliant. The Reavers is funny. I like the series with the Hamlet, the town, and the mansion. I kind of like that series of stories as well, kind of about the Snopes family trilogy in Yoknapatawpha County. So anyway, I won't continue on gushing about William Faulkner, but if you were to ask me what my favorite Southern novel is, then I would definitely say The Sound and the Fury. Question 2 was favorite Southern dramatist or playwright or play. I chose Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's from Texas. As am I, and I really just enjoy his sense of humor, and I enjoy his movies. Now, in all honesty, not all Wes Anderson movies work. They're not all equally good, but his first movie, Bottle Rocket, which I saw a long time ago, really got me hooked on Wes Anderson movies, and then Rushmore just made me a fan, essentially, for life. I like The Fantastic Mr. Fox, which is kind of a weird stop action or stop motion movie with animated foxes and animals. I really like that. I think that has a good sense of humor, and easily The Grand Budapest Hotel is my favorite movie right now. If you had to ask me what my top movie is, it would be that. And Wes Anderson is the screenwriter for all of those movies, so that's not exactly a play, and I'm not sure that Alan intended to include screenwriters in the category of dramatists, but I'm choosing Wes Anderson because, well, I'm the one doing the tag, and I really love Wes Anderson's movies. So the next question was, who's your favorite living Southern American writer? And on this, Alan and I agree. My favorite living Southern American writer is Cormac McCarthy. And like Alan, I like most of his work. I will say that I'm not as enamored of The Road as other people are. It almost feels like to me in The Road that he's trying a little too hard. But Cormac McCarthy writes a lot of books about the American Southwest and kind of literally the border between the United States and Mexico. All the Pretty Horses is the first book in the Border Crossing trilogy, which is kind of faded from public attention since the success of No Country for Old Men as a movie, and McCarthy becoming kind of more famous as an author than he probably was before. Um, if you don't think of McCarthy as a Southern writer, then you should probably read Suttree, which I read, which is about his time, which is fairly autobiographical about his relatively vagabond, that's probably the nicest word for it, life in Knoxville, Tennessee. And this was an enjoyable book. I'm not holding it up because it's my favorite, but because I think it's one of the most Southern novels that he wrote. But I'm a big fan of Blood Meridian, the Border trilogy. I really like those novels. And No Country for Old Men, I thought, was, while not his best work, in many ways really accessible, and I think it told an interesting story with some interesting ideas. So the next question was to name a Southern writer that you'd like to turn more people on to or draw more attention to, and I'm going to pick James Wilcox. James Wilcox, I'm not even sure writes anymore, but in the 90s he published a lot of really funny satirical books about life in the South that I think deserve a much wider audience. This is by far, I think, the most popular of those books, but I think he published 5, 6, 7 books, and Modern Baptist was the one that really kind of had the chance to make him into a better known author. I discovered him because a long time ago I read a profile of Wilcox in the New Yorker, which was essentially trying to do what I'm trying to do, draw more attention to him. But I believe he teaches writing at Tulane or LSU now, and I'm not sure that he's published in quite some time, and that's a shame because he has a really good satirical voice and a really good eye for, I think kind of the absurdity of Southern life sometimes, and he's able to poke fun at a lot of things about the South without, as a Southerner does. And, being from the South, I think that's a sensibility that, I don't want to sound snobby, but that's a sensibility that people who haven't grown up here don't quite have, how to make fun of the South without seeming like you're looking down on the South for its strangeness. And there's a lot of that. Anyway, if you could find a copy of any James Wilcox novel, I think you'd enjoy reading it. Some are much better than others. I'm not going to lie to you. They're not all equally good, and Modern Baptist is definitely the best. So if you ever see a copy of Modern Baptist at a used bookstore or something like that, pick it up. It's going to be worth however much, the small amount of money you probably pay for it. So the next question was to describe your first Southern reading experience. Like, what was, as a young person, what was the first thing that you read that was from the South or from a Southern writer? Somehow I escaped high school without being assigned to read Huckleberry Finn. The first Southern fiction I remember reading was A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. That's the first time I remember reading a story that was set in the South, that had characters that, for good and for bad, I could easily recognize in a situation I could easily imagine being in. And as disturbing as that story is, if you've read it then you know, as disturbing as that story is, the characters just really rang true to me and felt like people that I knew. And so that, I think, is the first real Southern reading experience that I had. So the last question was to name a popular Southern writer whose work you enjoy. And so I'm going to go again with a Texas person, and I really like Larry McMurtry. Not all of his stuff is particularly good. You can see the holes in The Last Picture Show, even though I think that's that's an incredibly Texas, small town Texas story. But Lonesome Dove, I just think, is a great work of popular, I'm going to call it literary fiction, even though it's kind of a genre story, and even though it's melodrama in lots of ways, and I think it's easy to look at it and say, well, this is just, pandering to an audience and, intentionally creating sad situations. But I honestly think that there's some beautiful stuff in here. And I enjoyed reading Lonesome Dove so much. And I'm old enough that I read it right around the time that the miniseries came out on television with Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones in the main role. So first I'm going to pick more than one here. First I would choose Lonesome Dove as one of my, and Larry McMurtry is one of my favorite Southern popular authors. And then also I'm going to mention Barbara Kingsolver, because I really, really liked the Poisonwood Bible. This book is so good. And I don't know whether it qualifies as popular fiction or literary fiction. I think it's literary fiction, but I really liked this book, and I really thought it was ambitious and creative and well imagined. I completely forgot about Donna Tartt, who I like a lot. I don't. I'm going to call Donna Tartt a popular Southern writer, and I like reading her books. That doesn't mean that I think that they are flawless. I think she has a habit of getting ahead of herself. You know, I would almost compare her to, I think she's a much better version of Haruki Murakami in that she creates these incredibly ambitious plots that involve all kinds of things, events, ideas, places, and I think sometimes she just loses control a little bit over her stories, and I'm never sure if her stories are meant to be taken seriously or if we're meant to recognize how implausible they actually are. I even sometimes wonder if we're supposed to, if what really we're supposed to think is that these are stories all taking place inside one of her characters' heads. You know, I think that particularly about The Secret History. You know, on the surface, it's kind of a campus mystery, things gone terribly wrong, outsider accepted to group, bad things happen. But on another level, some of it's so surreal that you have to kind of question whether it actually happened or if the main character is just making it up. And I don't know if that's intentional or not. That's kind of a Donna Tartt weirdness issue. Anyway, I realize I kind of went over the line on that question. I mentioned 3 writers, McMurtry, Kingsolver, and Donna Tartt. But that's the American Southern Writers tag. Thank you, Alan, over at Big Hard Books and Classics for tagging me. I don't really tag people very often because it's just not something I'm comfortable doing. Like I said in another video, I love being tagged. And maybe it's selfish then not to turn around and tag other people, but I have a feeling the people I would tag, I've already tagged and have enough tags to do, or might have already been tagged in this tag. So if you want to do this tag, how many times can I say tag in a 1 minute span? But if you want to do this tag, go ahead. I think it'd be really interesting to see what other people choose for their Southern writer things. And being from the South, I really appreciated the opportunity to get to talk about Southern writers and Southern fiction. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching.